Building Men is brought to you by Finish the Race Apparel, FTRapparel.com, the creators of all things building men, and by Become Stronger Industries, become-stronger.com, the creators of handmade steel maces, hammers, and other badass equipment.
When I started to really think about why can't there be post-traumatic growth? Why is everything got to be a disorder? See, we're not disordered. Bad shit happens to people, but that doesn't mean that we have a disorder. That means we actually have a superpower that makes us have the ability to grow faster and more efficiently than anyone else on this fucking planet. We just have to learn how to use that shit. That's Scarred and Unbeaten. That's the whole idea.
You're listening to the Building Men podcast with Dennis and Anthony Miralda, brothers on a mission
to help you become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
Welcome to the Building Men podcast. I'm going to start this episode a little bit different today. Anthony has not been in studio with me over the past month or so, and I'm looking for that way to start the episode, that really impactful way. And the guest that I have on today I've connected with, and I felt like this was a good way to trial run the new way I'm going to start the episode. So I pulled out this quote. This is from Robert Moore. Here's how it goes. The good king delighted in noticing and promoting good people to positions of responsibility. He held audience not to be seen, but to see, admire, and delight in his subjects, to reward them and to bestow honors upon them. Finally, the king leaves a legacy. He's willing to plant a tree today, knowing he will never enjoy the shade it has to offer. I love that because this idea of paying it forward, of doing something right now that you know you might not be able to enjoy the fruits of, but in the future, the work that you're putting in now, the legacy that you're leaving, this idea of being in service to other people, you might not see the benefit of it right now, but knowing that there will be someone in the future that will breathe a little bit easier because you were in existence on this planet. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce Kevin Demmons. He is a combat veteran. He is a childhood trauma advocate. He's a personal development coach, a strength and conditioning coach, public speaker. He runs the Instagram page, and his business is called Scarred and Unbeaten. And he's actually a pretty big fan of the Building Men podcast. What is up, my man? It's so good to see you on the podcast today.
What's up, brother? Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure, dude. We connected, it was like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And I feel like we're middle school girls texting each other back and forth right now.
My wife was just making fun of me for it. She's like, is that your boyfriend again? I was like, just mind your business over there. It's been pretty cool, man. It was very organic and it was really cool. And it was just me reaching out, telling you I love your podcast and the message you guys are sending to other men or people in general. And then you instantly came back to me, and it was just awesome ever since.
Yeah, and it's cool in that space when you find someone that your journeys are parallel. They're not right on top of each other, but we're on parallel highways. And what we're trying to do is help others become a better version of themselves, to deal with some of the shit that has gone on in their past and understand that their message or our collective messages can help other people. So it definitely resonated with me with what you're doing. And then we have a couple people that we knew that were in common, that you have met, that you went through programs. We'll talk about that during the podcast today, and someone that you work with now who will definitely resonate with our audience. But I want to go back and do a little dive into your origin story, because when we first got into Zoom together, we were shooting the shit about our childhood mentors, how we define masculinity growing up. And you had a really challenging experience growing up, and you talk about being a childhood trauma advocate. And so I'm going to ask you to start back in your origin story. Bring us through a little bit on your journey growing up and how the lack of a masculine figure or a strong masculine figure in your life impacted you growing up.
Yeah, totally. So from the time that my brain actually could form memory until about 14, 15 years old, I was abused in pretty much any way you can imagine, physically, verbally, and sexually. And I didn't even really truly understand what it was to be a man until within the last 2 years. And to be honest, like to be the full spectrum of manhood and being the protector and leader of your household, that's what I learned in the project. And that was very recent. But so, you know, I just grew up. My dad was an abusive alcoholic. I spent pretty much every night listening to my mom cry herself or cry, and I would fall asleep to that sound. My sister used to hide me under the sink in the bathroom when my dad was having one of his just asshole moments, which really were asshole nights, because it just was basically when he came through the door, I can see it in his eyes. So, you know, I can remember very vividly just sitting on the floor watching TV as a kid, and then knowing that he's on his way home from work, which he went and worked for probably 2 hours. I don't know what else he did, went to the bar and came home and beat the shit out of us and yelled and put holes in the wall and all that stuff. But, you know, when he walked through the door, I could look and see in his eyes, and you can see the difference, you know, in someone's eyes when they've been drinking or they haven't. And as soon as you can see that glossy look, or I saw that look, I instantly to the bedroom, you know, like my mom used to bring meals to me in the bedroom. I don't say this stuff to say I had the worst life in the world, because there's kids who have been through way worse and there's kids who have been through way less. But what I've learned over the time is this is my story. And if I can tell my story, maybe I can help other people start to tell theirs, or even better, start rewriting theirs. Because there was a time when I was letting my dad and my cousin, because that was the sexual side of the house, was my cousin. My dad was the verbal and physical abuse. And so I was letting the kid that he molded, I was letting that kid make all my decisions as an adult. I was letting that kid ruin my marriage, my relationships with friends, everything. So it wasn't until I kind of had a man in the mirror moment where I decided I'm no longer letting these assholes dictate my life. From here on out, I get to choose my happiness.
So Kevin, going back to that experience now, I mean, in childhood trauma is one of those things where as we experience a situation where at the moment we are unable to emotionally handle the enormity or the capacity of the situation. So there are traumas that happen that are one specific moment where it could be the death of a family member, where we remember the exact moment, but there's also the trauma that occurs over a period of time. So you likely had those specific moments that you could probably remember a specific beatdown that was really challenging. And you also remember the everyday cumulative effect of feeling that, oh shit, dad's coming home, he had a couple too many tonight. When you go back and think about those experiences, were you thinking I did something wrong, or it was your fault? Did you contribute to it in some way? Do you remember having those feelings of, oh shit, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, so dad is pissed? Or did you recognize at the time, he's a fucking asshole, like this is his shit, like he's coming in and he's ready to rip because of him, not because of me?
Yeah, I mean, as a younger kid, I always used to think like, what can I do right now to try to make this better? And if it does go bad, if he is yelling, if he's hitting my mom, if he's throwing me around, if he's in my face telling me I'm worthless, all these things, what can I do, or what didn't I do that could have stopped this from happening? You know, I used to fake being sick just because sometimes he would like show pity, or just his, I guess, a little bit of a fatherhood type instinct would kick in, and he'd try to care for me, maybe get me some water, sit down, think about it, pass out. I don't know. So I would do that as a younger kid. And as I got older, I got calloused really fast. My soul got my give a fuck factor just went right out the window. At like 14 years old, I gave zero shits about what he thought of me. I didn't care about him at all. And I never really looked back from those feelings towards him.
Was there a specific moment that you had that line in the sand stand up to a moment? I'm thinking about the movie City Slickers with Billy Crystal and his one friend. His name escapes me right now in the movie, but it was Mitch was Billy the Kid, was Billy Crystal's name in the movie. And he tells a story about he remembers the moment that he stood up to his father for the first time, that he said it was his best day when he said, no more, you're not going to hurt me. You're not going to hurt my mom. You're not going to hurt my sister anymore. And he stood toe to toe with his father, and his father went to go hit him and he walked away. And Billy Crystal looks at him and he goes, holy shit, that was your best day. He goes, what the hell was your worst day? And he's like, same day. And it was that emotional experience going through. Was there that timestamp where you remember, like, this was the time that I fucking like stood my ground and I'm like, you know what? No more. This is not going to happen anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think of two times. One was when I was about, I think it was around 13, 14 years old. I had been living with my sister. Like, how this worked in my childhood was from like, and at 8 years old, I officially moved in with my sister, like full time, but he was too drunk or just didn't care enough to notice. So it wasn't until about 14 where I was finally moving all of my extra stuff out of my parents' house. So he was drunk in the kitchen and yelling at my mom and I, and telling us that, you know, you're not moving out, you belong here and this and that. And I was like, no, I'm leaving. I've been gone for years. You just haven't noticed. And he said, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out, which is one of his favorite phrases. So I just brushed it off like, yeah, fuck off. And then he grabbed a knife and proceeded to follow us out of the house as we got in the car. And my window was down and I saw him coming and I started rolling it up as fast as I could, because this was pre-electric door days. We were not exactly rich. So I'm fucking racking up on this thing as fast as I can. And I remember he hits the window just as I get it up. And I realized in that moment, my dad was going to kill me that day. So that's a tough thing to take as a kid, even as an adult. I mean, that's supposed to be your dad, you know? And the other time I was about 18, just about graduated high school. And my grandfather, who was the other person who raised me, like my grandfather and my sister pretty much split time in where I stayed. So my grandfather was the one that brought me everywhere as far as school and stuff like that goes. He was my best friend. Well, he had just died, and that was a rough day. And so the same day, I believe, I was at my sister's house and my dad, drunk. It's a reoccurring theme you'll notice throughout this fucking day. But he calls and he starts bitching her out and yelling at her. And I have just had it. Like, I just snapped. Took the phone and said, you'll never talk to her like that again. Hung up. Drove to my parents' house. And I don't remember all the details because it was one of those like blackout pissed off moments. But I remember flipping over our deep freezer and I told him that I was going to kill him if he ever talked to my sister like that again or hurt my mom. His response, being the man he is, was he called the cops on me and tried to get me arrested. So it felt amazing to tell him that, but at the same time, it opened my eyes to, I mean, this guy is such a coward. Like he's all about the physicality until even an 18-year-old kid is in his face, you know, he's just a bitch. So that's how I remember that.
And it's the idea that you laugh at the devil and he goes away. It was that moment that you stood up and you saw his true colors of what he truly stood for. You mentioned, Kevin, that it wasn't until recently that you started to tell your story. What was it that helped you get to the point where you felt that you can go back and relive this and tell it in a way that you could help other people?
It was kind of weird, honestly. Like it was, I was going through COVID and I was quarantined downstairs because my wife has several health issues and I just can't afford to get her sick. So I was laying on a couch downstairs here in my man cave / office. And I was just in a deep meditation, which I never really started doing prior to reading the book Fear Vana, which I'm sure we're going to get into. And so I just started having these visions of telling my story and helping. There was no name to this kid, but there was just this kid that I kept seeing where I would I was helping that kid just by telling him my story. And like, basically the whole concept and the reason behind Scarred and Unbeaten, which you mentioned, is I want to be I want to be able to help the kid that I want to be able to help my 16-year-old self. I never had any role models growing up besides my grandfather. And as I grew older, I would find them in other men, like my high school football coach and just people I follow on social media, the project guys and Akshay, and just other men who live a good life and live with value. But I didn't have that, so I had to kind of search for it.
In that state where you go back, you're having that meditative moment and thinking about your 16-year-old self, if you had an opportunity to go back, what did 8-year-old Kevin need to hear, 12-year-old Kevin need to hear in those moments where you were waiting for your father to come home or not knowing what was in store for you? What was a message that you wish you had an opportunity to talk to your previous self about right now?
I would say to that kid that, this too shall pass, and that understand that your story is being written for you because you don't have the ability to write it for yourself yet. But there's going to come a time when you're going to be able to make your own decisions, and there's going to come a time where you're going to be able to leave your footprint on this earth. And when that time comes, you need to not let your shitty past dictate the rest of your life.
Love that. You mentioned your grandfather was a guy who you looked up to, and in that tragic moment, when you're thinking about your grandfather and what he meant to you when there wasn't that stable man in your life, you also mentioned you look towards other men for mentorship, for coaching, even if it was from afar. So you mentioned your high school football coach, people that you saw on social media. What were the traits in the men that you were looking up to that were the most attractive to you? What were the traits that you were like, wow, this is what I'm missing in my life, or this is what it truly means to be a man?
Well, first off, they weren't beating their wife or their kids. So, that was always huge, when I was younger and at get-togethers and stuff with my friends, and I could see I was always trying to pawn myself off, like, hey, would your parents want me to come over and stay tonight? That kind of thing. But I was looking for, I really didn't even know what I was looking for. I was just looking for somebody who was going to be nice and not lash out with verbal or physical abuse, like, didn't take much to make me happy as a kid. Like, I didn't have an actual bed until I got to college. From 8 years old until then, I slept on the couch or on the floor at my sister's house. But I didn't give two shits because I wasn't getting hurt. And I think, growing up with without a lot of those comforts makes you a stronger person in the end. To answer your question with the men, I was looking for, and what I ended up finding was like strength and how they were like planning their days and how they were organized and how they actually were working towards something in life. And they had goals. I didn't understand how they were doing it, and I wouldn't understand that for years to come. But I just knew that I wanted to be fulfilled in life. I wanted to have something I was working towards, and I wanted the people around me that I loved to know that I loved them.
So fast forward after that high school experience, or that your experience with your father, when you have the moment and he's going to call the cops on you, you made a decision to go into the armed forces. So talk to us about that time in your life and why you made that decision to move in that direction.
My grandfather was in the Navy, so I always knew I wanted to be in the military, and I originally wanted to go to BUDS and be a SEAL, but full transparency, I scored 2 points too low on the ASVAB for the Navy to take me. So I walked down the hall and I looked into the Army recruiter and I was like, this is my ASVAB score. I want to jump out of planes, kick doors in, do all that hooah shit. They were like, come sit down. And they fucking flipped open the book and had me start signing. There was no question with them. So, but the reason I went when I did was because I went to college directly after high school, and I got a degree as an electrician, or I got an electrical construction degree, and went to work as an electrician for like 6 months and realized I absolutely hated this shit. So I knew then that it was like my time to make a decision, because I wasn't financially stable by any means. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And I really felt like I needed to start writing my own story. Like I talk about, I needed to start doing that somewhere else. I needed a fresh start. And what better way to do that than to join the Army, I thought. Because especially since the recruiter told me I was going to be able to afford 2 Mustangs, and it would be fucking awesome. So I'm still waiting on the Mustangs, but it was pretty awesome.
Talk to us about that experience in the Army then. What were just a little bit about what your experience entailed, and a lesson that you learned during that experience.
I learned it was weird, because getting yelled at, a lot of people hate that. You know, they're standing there in line and someone's right in your face screaming at you. It really wasn't that big of a deal to me. So I guess I could thank my dad for that. But it was very challenging in the aspect of just learning the structure and the routine of things. The military teaches you so much about, like, you know, when I woke up, I had to make my bed a certain way during basic. And, you got to be on time or ahead of schedule. Like, I'm never late for anything ever. And so I'm thankful for that. It taught me a lot about myself as far as what physically I could endure, and how far you can go, you know, when you push your limits and you just refuse to quit, that kind of thing. So I thought it was a good experience, obviously.
One of the things that you talk about a lot is the idea of post-traumatic growth. It was something that we talked about on the episode with Akshay Nanavati. We called it Into the Storm. And Akshay is the creator of Fearvana. We'll get into Fearvana in a little bit, but where did you first come up with that idea, or connect with the idea of post-traumatic growth?
It was, I believe Akshay was actually the first person I've heard the term post-traumatic growth. I had always hated the term post-traumatic stress disorder, because when you say something is a disorder, there's no fixing that shit. Like, you're stuck that way. It's the way it is. It's like when I got out of the Army, I went to the VA, they gave me the screening test, like 10, 15 questions. I answered yes. And some of the questions were like, are you sad? Do you miss the people who died? Like, do you sometimes think about them? And all of them, I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. Who doesn't? Who isn't sad when bad shit happens? You know? But their answer to that was to just give me a handful of pills and send me home. So anyway, that mentality of the victimhood, and okay, I have a disorder now. The VA just told me I don't have to work anymore. I can just sit home, take my pills, and feel bad for myself. And so I did for years. And when I started to really think about, why can't there be post-traumatic growth? Why is everything got to be a disorder? See, we're not disordered. You know, bad shit happens to people, but that doesn't mean that we have a disorder. That means we actually have a superpower that makes us have the ability to grow faster and more efficiently than anyone else on this fucking planet. We just have to learn how to use that shit. That's Scarred and Unbeaten. That's the whole idea.
Building men of character, integrity, strength, compassion, and empathy through transformational mentoring, coaching, and motivational speaking is our mission here at Building Men. To work with me as a one-on-one life coach, you can find information in the show notes, or you can visit our website at buildingmen.io, where you can book a free 30-minute discovery call to help you become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Now, back to the show. So when you're in that state and you are taking the pills, you said you spent some time on your couch and in this depressive state, what was it that pulled you out of that moment? Was it a group? Was it a book? Was it a mentor? How did you get yourself out of that space?
It was a book. It was Fearvana. It was Akshay's book. And I read it the first time, and it really started to hit home what he was saying. And I started to look at myself, and I kind of had an epiphany looking at my flag. And I was thinking to myself, I'm saying that I'm living in honor of all of those who died, but how am I doing that? I'm doing that by letting my marriage go to shit. I'm letting my fitness go to shit. I'm fat and fucking bonbons on the couch, feeling bad for myself. Like, I wasn't doing anything to live in honor of anyone. If anything, I was living in spite of them. And I had another one of those visions, just thinking about them looking down on me, going, let's see what Kevin's doing with his life since he's still alive. We don't get to be alive anymore. He does. Let's see how he's doing. Oh, he's eating Twinkies and watching South Park on the couch. Perfect. What kind of honor is that? So I decided then and there that I was going to start living in honor, and actually living in honor, living my best life, doing everything I can to honor them. Yeah. And so when I read the book, Fearvana opened my eyes to using your pain as a way of growing, the post-traumatic growth that he talks about. And I never looked back from there, really.
And we talked about Akshay, one of the most savage, badass individuals you'd ever meet. What if you saw him at the grocery store picking out avocados? You wouldn't think twice. You'd be like, is this, little Indian guy is next to me? Whatever. I'm sure he's going to make guacamole. But then when you talk to him, and when you truly consider the way that he thinks about pain and suffering, it's in a different way, but you can't help but be changed by listening to that man. For me, as a podcast host, it was one of the most impactful episodes that I have done. There were a couple times during that interview, Kevin, where I had to remind myself that I need to ask another question right now, because I'm hearing him talk, and I feel like I'm listening to him speak on a stage somewhere, throw out this unbelievable inspirational epiphany moments, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta ask a question right now. I gotta get myself back on my game. When he's saying, I am not my thoughts, I am the thinker of my thoughts. I am not my feelings, I am the feeler of my feelings. I am not my experiences, I'm the experiencer of my experiences. Those things resonated with me in such a deep way. So the fact that this was the book that got you to the spot where you're like, all right, I'm ready now to get out of the Twinkie eating, bonbon, South Park watching couch guy. What was the first step now? So once you make the decision, and I struggle with this too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Is it you get yourself up and you're like, I am going to start moving. I'm going to take the steps. I'm going to do what I have to do. So I get up and I start doing it. Or do you have to say in your head, I am the motherfucker who is going to do it first? So is it the step first, or is it the thought that I am the person that can do this first?
I think it was the thought that I had to do it. I didn't have a choice. I was either, like I said, I was either going to let circumstances and experiences of my past literally make every decision for the rest of my life, and I was going to live a victim mentality, just sad life, or I was going to live my best life. I was going to actually live in honor of those the fallen, like I said I would. So I knew the first thing I could do was control my fitness. So I knew how to train I started working out in high school for football, and the military. I never really stopped there. It wasn't until I came home and I had all this extra time to think that it's funny how when you have all kinds of extra time, you feel like you don't have any time. And so the first thing I could control was my fitness. So I every day started working out again, started training, started looking towards other mentors who were training certain ways that I ended up, falling in love with, like how I train now.
The victim mentality is something that I endorse wholeheartedly, getting yourself out of this space. And I look at it as being the hero or the architect mentality, like being the hero or the architect of your story. In my journal, I have it written down at the end of it. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributes. And that's something, if I start going down that slippery slope at all, I will read this to myself that I am not a fucking victim here. And where you could have gone in that direction, no one would have blamed you at all from your past, the shit that you dealt with, going, serving in the military, being a combat veteran, and having people that you knew and cared about, that you witnessed them like go through challenging situations themselves. No one would have blamed you for doing it. But what you did was you fucking said, after reading that book and experience it, you fucking sacked up and said, not me. I am going to move because I have to move. And I find that very, one, I appreciate the authenticity and being able to tell that story. But two, as it serves as a reminder to other people, if you are laying on the couch with the fucking Twinkies, and FYI, Twinkies, 68% air. Fun fact. 68% of a Twinkie is air. I learned that recently. So little
can't be that bad.
Building men fun fact. The rest of it is pure polyunsaturated fats and whatever the fuck else is in there. But yeah, Twinkies 68% air. All right, so now you start moving again, you start training again. Like, all right, your mindset shifts to the fact that not only am I going to start moving, I have to start moving. This is just who I am. So talk to us about, lead us down this journey. What are the next couple steps in your life to get you to where you currently sit right now?
Oh, well, fuck, there's a lot of steps. There's miles. The fitness aspect, I just made it habitual. And what I ended up figuring out was anything in life that you want, you've got to make that shit habitual. Because when you do that, it becomes, Bedros Koulian talks about it with stacking wins. And that's how I talk to my clients today. Like, the more wins you can stack, the more confidence you build, the stronger your foundation, and the more self-confidence you have to take on new things. So if I hadn't have built that foundation, there's no way I would have had the confidence to say, all right, now I want to start coaching people who have faced traumas or bad experiences in their life, which, by the way, is every fucking human being on this planet. So it was very eye-opening to me to start to see my confidence grow as I set a time to wake up. I did not hit the fucking snooze button. I worked out every day. Sweat equity is what I call it. And you got to put that shit in every single day. Even on your off days, go for a walk, do something. My daily tasks, I learned from other people how to plan out my schedule and to have time specific for different things in my morning routine, all that stuff. Like, it took a long time to build the structure of what I have now, but since I've been doing it for almost 3-4 years now, as far as actually having a structured routine, and it's grown and become what it is today. I mean, it's a constant evolution. That's what I try to tell people is, just because you have a certain routine now, if you find a better way to do something, don't hesitate to change that shit. As long as you're making a conscious effort to follow your routine. Like, if you're going to change your routine, change it the next day. Write it down in your evening journaling and change it the next day. Don't change it the day of, because now you're stacking losses, not wins. But yeah, that's how a lot of trial and tribulation, a lot of heartache. I fell off the wagon many times as far as not holding myself accountable and shit like that. But I'm proud and happy and thankful for the process, because that's what makes us.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the word habitual is interesting. And you sent me a message yesterday or the day before about a previous podcast that you had listened to. It was called Be the Author of Your Day. And it was me doing a solo podcast back in December of 2020. And this was me. I was basically homeless at that time in my life and divorced with 3 kids going back and forth. I was crashing at my sister's place on the Jersey Shore. when I had my kids, just because there was enough space where I could have 3 kids there as well. So I was driving 60 miles, picking them up. And thank God there was virtual learning during that time. Otherwise, I have no idea how I would have been able to handle it. But at the time, I did a podcast called Be the Author of Your Day. And I went back and I listened to it when you said that you found that podcast. And I was like, let me go back for shits and giggles and check out what I was saying during that time. And that was me. I was very regimented in my day. And I used the word habitual. And I talked about the H was, was health. And I had each word, each letter, HABIT, stood for something different. Like the B was breathe, the I was inspiration, the T was being thankful. So I tried to make an acronym out of that word. But I went back and I listened to some of the things that I was doing on a regular basis as far as journaling is concerned, listening to podcasts or something that was inspirational, the input versus the output, what I'm putting into my body, not only nutrition wise, but also what I'm consuming via social media and news and things like that didn't serve me anymore. So when I went back and I listened to it, I was like, I was pretty fucking dialed in during that time, considering all the other shit that was going on in my life, that it was totally chaotic, but it helped me become better because I had these daily things that I was doing. And I wrote down yesterday, as we were texting back and forth, I wrote down the phrase baseline for bullshit. And what I meant by that was, over the past 3 months or so, I've slipped up in a couple different areas. So I wasn't training as hard as I was before. Even my meditation, I wasn't doing on a regular basis. And in the last 2 weeks or so, I went back wholeheartedly into everything that I was doing before. And the reason I wrote baseline for bullshit was, what I did was I was able to prove to myself that I could do these things on a regular basis and sustain them over a period of time. So the fact that I slipped up over the last month, 2 months, 3 months, my baseline for my own bullshit raised to a point where I'm never going to settle back to that spot that I once was. I'm never going to be the 255-pound dough ball on the couch, sucking down 7 beers, eating wings every night. Like, I'm never going to get to that point again. So my baseline for my own bullshit raised to a level where I'm no longer going to accept feeling the way that I felt, whatever. So it's interesting that you found that episode and use the word habitual, because it is so important. It is those daily things you're doing on a regular basis. You mentioned getting up at a specific time. You mentioned journaling. You mentioned your daily training sessions. What are a couple other things that are a part of your daily routine, your habits that are just part of who you are as a man now?
Ice cold showers and meditation. Yep.
When you meditate, is it just you sitting alone and breathing through it, or do you have any kind of an app that you use? I did Headspace for a while, was an app that I used for meditation. So how do you go about meditating?
I tried Headspace and I've tried some other things, but I do box breathing. So I'll do like 10 rounds of box breathing, which is the 5, 5, 5, 5. So inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, that.
Yep.
I do that about 10 rounds, and then I'll go into a visualization meditation, which for me, I'm looking for, the things that I want in life. So my ultimate goal is, at the end of the day, to be a bigger public speaker, in the sense that I want to be able to talk to bigger crowds, not because I want to be famous. I just want one-on-one coaching is awesome, and there's definitely a place for it, and I still will always do it. But if I can talk to hundreds, even thousands of people at once, then I can impact more people. I can get the message out further, which, I mean, I think people already know the message or hear the message from a lot of different ways. But like I said, everyone's story is different. So if you can impact somebody with your story, you said you were thankful that I would tell my story. Well, my story has zero power if I don't use it. If I don't tell it, then all this shit that I went through means nothing. It's just mine, rather than possibly helping somebody else change their life and start living their legendary life.
You mentioned Bedros Keuilian and a guy that we had on the podcast. It was in December. Era and Alejandrino. Those are guys that are part of the project. So talk to us about your decision to join that group and a little bit of an idea about what that was like for you.
It was, I saw Akshay on the Empire podcast, because at that time I was working with him, working as business partner with him. which was a crazy story from the get-go with that too. But he was on the Empire podcast. Bedros started talking about the project, and I was like, it's been a while since I've physically tested myself, mentally tested myself. And this kind of looks like fun, like, because the way I look at suffering and the way that Akshay looks at suffering is not the way most people look at suffering. It's a beautiful thing when you can test yourself and you can go beyond any limit that you thought was possible. And that's what I thought the project was all about. And I was absolutely right. I reached out to Bedros that day and said, hey, I want in on this project. And he said, all right, I'll have someone get a hold of you. So one of his assistants messaged me. Next thing I know, I'm on the phone with Ray Cash Care, and we're finalizing things, taking payment, and setting the date. And, then that was it. It was pretty pain-free as far as actually setting it up. Going through it was a whole different fucking story.
So when we had Aaron on, the fit beard, and he talks about the white belt mentality and going into situations, not being afraid to be the novice at something. And that's how you truly grow in experiences and get better in your life is going in thinking, okay, I need to get better, or whatever it is, not being afraid of the unknown in front of you. And that's truly how you grow. So as you go out there, it's a pretty daunting thing. There's physical challenges. You pretty much get beaten down. But after going through your experience in the military, I'm sure for you, it was a lot different than the normal Joe who's on the couch that decides to go and do this. So give us a little bit of a look into what that experience actually entails.
So yeah, for me, the getting in my face and yelling at me, or, you know, the some of the fuck games, as we call them in the military, with just playing with your head is, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, you're going to be wrong, that kind of thing. I was expecting that, but there's many aspects of the project that I definitely was not expecting. My favorite, well, I had a couple of favorite pieces. The most eye-opening moment for me was when, and they show it on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, is the burying yourself alive portion. So you dig your own grave, which I had been digging my entire life. And then I buried my bitch self and arose the beast. When I came out of that body bag, the bitch stayed in the hole. That's how I envisioned it. So that was my most eye-opening moment. And my favorite moment was we had a guest instructor, Lieutenant Jason Redmond, which I'm sure you know who he is. He's a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL, and he got beat up pretty bad on deployment. And he's written a couple of books, which I've read both of them. He's a great man. I had the honor of meeting him during this project, and getting my ass beat by him, which was great. And there was a portion of the project which is like surf torture, Navy SEAL PT type stuff. And I'll never forget, I was getting out of the van and Lieutenant Redmond was like, well, boys, at least it's not windy. And I couldn't feel the wind yet. So I'm getting out and can't see anything. And I get out and the wind hits me and I'm like, well, he was fucking lying. And then, but I didn't even realize that we were still behind the building. So as we come out onto the beach, now the real wind hits us and it's cold. I mean, brutal cold. And I'm sitting there shivering and I'm looking out at the ocean and I'm looking at Lieutenant Redmond and Ray, another like badass Navy SEAL, great man, one of the instructors. And I think to myself, who else gets smoked on a beach by two legendary SEALs? No one. So it was one of those moments where you can really use perspective to make your decision for you. Like anything in life, any bad thing that happens to you, you have two choices. Think of it as a horrible thing, poor, pitiful me, or think of it as a chance to grow. I had the chance to get smoked on a beach by two famous Navy SEALs. And that was one of the best experiences of my life.
It's funny, as people that I work with right now, I have them write down things in their life that they have a problem with. So you would say, I have a problem with my job. I have a problem with my relationship. I have a problem with the way that Sasha treated me whenever. and I have them write that down and read it out. And then I say, all right, change the word problem to opportunity. So now I have an opportunity with my job. I have an opportunity with my relationship. And I say, the word golden in front of the word opportunity. I have a golden opportunity with fill in the blank. I have a fucking golden opportunity with fill in the blank. And it's a total mindset shift when you think of those things that could have been holding you back. Now there's something that you're like, all right, this is a challenge in front of me, but shit, I have an opportunity to flip the script here, to make it become my bitch, like you had just said. Pretty powerful shit right there. And it's we can put that in the show notes as well. Just how do you get in touch with that group for the project? Modern Day Night, it's called, correct? Modern Day Nights.
Yeah.
And but I don't want to gloss over your experience with Akshay, because it's something. You read the book, you're in this really depressive, dark, doughy state, and I was in the same space, a little bit different circumstances, but in a similar space. And you read the book Fearvana, you start moving, and you actually reached out to Akshay. So talk to us a little bit about reaching out to him and how that impacted your life in a positive way.
Yeah, it was really cool. I read the book and I was like, this guy is way too famous. He's never going to fucking respond. But I messaged him on Instagram, and he immediately, like, I think it was maybe like 20 minutes later, messages me back with a video message, by the way, not just a text, thanking me so much for reading the book, talking to me about, some of the things we had in common because we were both in the service. Of course, he was in the Marines, which is far less superior than the Army. So, we can't all be savages. And he just thanked me, and it turned into more of he was like, anytime I can help you with anything, please let me know. So every now and then I would maybe shoot him a question or something like that. In the long run, I ended up hiring as my coach. So then he became a lot more of a mentor and someone I was learning from than just someone that was like my friend kind of thing. And then it went a step further into one day he was like, hey, well, would you ever consider coming to work for Fearvana? And I was like, fuck yeah. I don't even know. I didn't even think that was a realm of possibility. You know what I mean? Like, because I was still living in the mentality in my head that I was meant for nothing and I was going to be nothing because I came from nothing. And even after all the shit that I had been through, going through the Army and stuff like that little kid was still there. So he said that to me, and I said, yeah, man, I'm all in. What can I do? And he said, well, think about some stuff that you can do, that you would want to do. And so I came back to him and I was like, well, fitness, like that's the only thing I know. I'm good at training people in strength conditioning training, in any goal that they ever have as far as fitness goes. So he said, well, I don't have anything for fitness, but how about marketing? I was like, what the fuck, dude? I just told you fitness. I was in the Army. I don't know anything about marketing. And he's like, that's fine. That's fine. So he sends me like 3 or 4 emails with different trainings on marketing and sales. And he's like, just study those, learn that, and we'll go from there. Well, what I didn't realize, and he opened my eyes to, is he had other people, like he had a friend who, is a master's in business and marketing. And that guy wanted to do the job that he actually wanted me to do. But Akshay, before even talking to me, he told that guy, no, I already got somebody for the job. Sorry, it's taken. That was me, the kid that grew up in a trailer park, had no knowledge of marketing, had, no money mindset, none of that shit, until I started learning it from people who had gone where I wanted to be. So long story short, I studied those trainings, and that week I was starting to write copy for Fearvana. And we haven't looked back since. Now I'm basically running the whole operation.
It's absolutely amazing. I love this story. What can you do? I strength and conditioning, physical fitness. You know what? I need someone to drive a submarine. So you're going to go ahead and do that. Fucking learn. Yeah, like, what the
great
fuck?
idea.
That's amazing. All right. So with Fearvana now, we had Akshay on the podcast again. One of my favorite episodes that I've done, because I've learned so much. What's the future for Fearvana? Now that you are a main part in the organization, what's the future with what you're doing?
Fearvana is is going from a story to a movement. It's that message to anybody that you cannot allow your fear to dictate your life. And a lot of the same ways that Scarred and Unbeaten, the message is you can't allow your scars to dictate the rest of your life. You can't use your scars as an excuse for mediocrity. So Fearvana, the concept is anything great in life sits right on the other side of fear. Like if fear is right here, the greatest things in your life are right here. You just have to reach for them. We got a clothing line coming out. We got a supplement line coming out. Akshay is always off in Antarctica doing some polar exploration, crazy shit. Like a lot of big things coming, a couple of really awesome things that are in the pipeline that I can't talk about yet, but will come out soon.
That is awesome. And he shared the picture, and when we interviewed him, 3 of his fingers were still bandaged up when he got severe frostbite. I wanted to say, thank God you didn't fucking pull out your Johnson and take a piss in the wind, because who knows what that could have been like. My God, the guy is such a fucking savage.
We were joking about that. He's like, one of the toughest things is figuring out how to take a piss with gloves on. And, I can't even imagine, because it's in Antarctica, so you're cold. So, there's an accordion fucking concept going on in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And you can't, not only that, but you have gloves on. You can't grab anything. It would not be a situation that I would want to find myself in, but he loves it. So
yeah, shrinkage is a real thing. It's a real fucking thing. We need to talk about that the next time that we have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
We're just going to do 15 minutes just on shrinkage. We'll get the whole medical thing behind it. We'll share some fun stories about shrinkage. And dude, cold showers are part of your norm. So that's got to be something you're experiencing on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's something we need to really bring awareness to, us men. We get judged too often when we come off the beach and stuff like that. Like you got to give us some time.
Give us a little time to fully represent ourselves.
Fuck.
The Shrinkage Awareness Foundation. We'll come up with a good acronym for that moving forward. All right. So the last question, as a fan of the podcast, the last question we like to ask, which will be a part of the Building Men book in the future, will be: tell us something right now. If you were to, somebody presses pause on this episode, something they can do immediately, one thing that they can do starting now that will change the trajectory of their life. It could be anything at all in any direction you want to go, but what is one thing someone could do after listening to you?
One thing that you could do is set a time to wake up and do it every single day. If you can just start with one win, one habit that you can make habitual, like we talked about, if you can do that, then you can slowly start adding more things, more wins to your day. But if you can at least get up on time, you're starting your day by telling yourself you are important enough to stick to your word.
Tremendous. Kevin, where can the Building Men audience find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Scarred and Unbeaten, as well as my Facebook is Kevin Demmons. And you guys can reach out anytime. I'm always looking to help anyone reach their physical or life goals, whatever you need. I'm more than happy to help.
Truly appreciate it, man. For the Building Men audience, building.men on Instagram, buildingmen.io is our website. If you haven't done so yet, we would encourage you to rate the podcast. Please leave a review if you have a minute, even if it's just a sentence or two. That really goes a long way in helping other people find what we're doing. And then share our podcast with anyone who you think might benefit. Starting May 8th, we will have a free event. It's going to be called the Tribe of Brothers. Me and Anthony will be hosting twice a month a Zoom meeting. The first one will be free. And then after that, to subscribe to it is $27 a month. And we will have twice a month Zoom meetings, and once a month during those Zoom meetings, we'll have a guest come on. We'll do a quick interview, and they'll share some experience with anyone who's signed up for it. So please take a look out for that. I'm going to leave the audience with this. I started the episode with a quick quote: two talking about the king and the king and what they're doing for other people. And I would certainly put Kevin Demmons in this category. The king leaves a legacy. He's willing to plant a tree today, knowing he will never enjoy the shade it has to offer, understanding that what Kevin is doing is helping so many men become a better version of themselves. He might not be around to enjoy all the fruits of his labor, but it is something that is so powerful, so important for so many people, normalizing that idea of the shit that you're going through, being able to be vulnerable, and the idea of that post-traumatic growth, which will be the title of this episode. For the Building Men audience, go a step further than you thought you can go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.